My name is Peter Joseph Harden. I'm 47. I was born in May of 1966. So I'm a child of the Vietnam era, but I wasn't old enough to be in Nam. Okay. But I was in the military. I asked for European deployment and I got to be stationed in Germany. So in '85, I was transferred to Wiesbaden, Germany. So there was, it's Germany. You grow up in America and you get to go to Germany. You have two options. You can stay on base and kind of just, hunker down, or you can, make a resolution to go out and explore and do things. And that's kind of the attitude I took. But one of the things I really wanted to do while I was there was visit Berlin.
After World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones that later merged to become 2 main occupation zones: Soviet-occupied East Germany and West Germany, which was occupied by the English, Americans, and French. Berlin was also divided even though it was located within the Soviet-controlled East Germany. On August 13, 1961, the German Democratic Republic, the government of East Germany, began to build a wall through Berlin that would become the Berlin Wall. This wall separated East and West Berlin and stopped most travel between the two sides.
Basically, it was just me and my girlfriend that were making the trip. And we could have gone in two ways. You can fly in to West Berlin, or you can drive in. The way we got there was we drove. There's a road, but the only people who can go down the road are people who are authorized. So to get on, and when you go through basically 2 checkpoints, first the American checkpoint in West Germany, and then the Russian checkpoint, which by that point you're in East Germany.
After the creation of the Berlin Wall, checkpoints Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie were the only ways to get into West Berlin from East Germany. Checkpoint Alpha was located in Helmstadt, Germany, and served as the only autobahn that the Allies could use to get to Berlin by land. Both cars and trains stopped here before entering East German territory on their way to Berlin.
So then we go through and we get to the American side, right? And they go, oh, okay, you're here, and we're going to debrief you about your trip. And then they let us, and we're in West Berlin. West Berlin was like Germany. I mean, I've been stationed in Germany at this point probably for about a year and a half. But West Berlin was just like Germany, only times 2, right? If there were the lights, there were like twice as many lights. There were, clubs, there were twice as many clubs. Colors, there was twice as many colors. Everybody painted something very bright, right? And I was talking to somebody, later, and they said the reason is you're Germans, right, who have elected to live in Berlin, West Berlin. You're Americans, you're whomever, but you're surrounded by the Russians. And it's very stressful, just day in, day out. Even though that you don't come into contact with them, you're like Americans in an island of communism. So to kind of break some of the stress, it's like, how you're nervous and you laugh too loud. It's the same thing. But they would do things more, right, to just kind of break some of the stress and just to kind of break some of the tension. So we did, some of the usual things. We went to some of the museums that were there. We went to the zoo. There was a great zoo in West Berlin. We went to clubs, we went to dinners, we just saw some of the architecture. We went to the train station, and it was beautiful. And we just kind of, looked around. But one of the main reasons that we came was so that we could go to East Berlin. So the next day, this is like one of 2 days that we're going to go into East Berlin. And again, just like when you go through East Germany, you have to be in uniform. Well, when you go into East Berlin, you have to be in uniform. And same thing, you're going to go into East Berlin, they give you this briefing or this class on the things that you're supposed to do and the things that you're not supposed to do when you're over there. Rule number 1, keep your uniform on at all times. Don't change into civilian clothes unless you're trying something on to buy. Otherwise, after you try it on, take it off and put your uniform back on. You can talk to the people all you want, but the more people you talk to, the more people you have to tell us that you talk to, because we're going to ask you for the details of your trip. It's not like they grill you under a light, but they do want to know kind of how your day went. So when you come back out, they debrief you again.
Checkpoint Charlie is the most well-known checkpoint for passing into East Berlin. It connected the east side of Berlin to the west side and passed directly through the wall. The wall was claimed to be a measure to protect socialist East Germany from Western fascists, though the large number of people escaping to the west through Berlin was the main reason for the wall's creation. Many tried to escape into West Berlin even after the wall was built, and at least 171 people were killed in attempts.
We also, instead of walking through, we were driving through, right? So most people, they just walk through Checkpoint Charlie, which, again, if you read a lot of spy novels, like that was the, where everybody went into East Berlin. If you were in the military, was you went through Checkpoint Charlie. And it was basically, these two lanes with a booth in the middle and arms that let you down and that go up and down to let vehicles in and out. On the American side, it's very regular. But at that point, you're passing through the wall. You're passing, through the Berlin Wall. And on the other side, are the Russian soldiers. And these guys don't have the Kalashnikovs that they had whenever I was, going through at Helmstadt. They have these big 50 caliber automatic weapons, right? And these are like, mounted on pillars, and takes two hands to hold them, right? And it's like something they might shoot out of a helicopter. And the barrels are really long, and the bullets, would look like this. I mean, a 50 caliber bullet actually is probably about that long, right? And the whole reason that they're there are to shoot the trucks and that might try and run through the gate, not from the American side getting in, but from the German side getting out. But as you're walking across and you're on the sidewalk, there's these holes all over the place. You see holes in the walls, you see holes in the ground, and it's because the Russians shoot at whomever tries to come through. The instructions they give you are, if shooting starts, get out of the way. Try and get into an alcove. But there was no shooting. So we drove through, show them our papers, and we're in East Berlin. And it was like a cloud passed over the sun. I mean, as an American, it's really, you grow up in America and you are here all the time. You have freedoms and, you're allowed to do what you want. You go down the street, unless you break a law, the police aren't going to mess with you. This was like Kafka. This was like George Orwell's 1984. To start off with, there was a black ZIL, which is a black Russian-made car that fell in behind us, after we passed through. So we're driving down the road. There's a black ZIL probably 4 or 5 car lengths back. If we came to a stop, it came to a stop. If we turned, it turned. And it stayed with us probably for about an hour. Whenever we got out to go into a shop or to go to a restaurant, it stayed with us. Whenever we went into a department store, it stayed with us. And, if we left, if we were just walking, it would go into where one of the people in the car would just go into where we just came out of and talk to the people that we had just talked to. And then they would come back out and then they would get in the car. Now, if we drove away, they wouldn't do that. They'd just kind of get in the car. But they probably kept track of where we were going. So, that's the kind of feeling that you have. You're being followed and someone is keeping an eye on you. The other thing is, now I told you how bright and glitzy and glittery West Berlin was. Well, East Berlin was gray. I mean, it was all shades of gray. It was all shades of black and white. There were colors here and there, right? I mean, but they were muted and they weren't fresh. If a building had been painted, it was painted a long time ago. If it had a color, the color was kind of washed out or sooty, where dirt had gotten on it and then not been cleaned off. And you could see it. The buildings were block and square and not painted, bright colors, and things were dirty. We went in the winter time, so it's kind of snowy and wintry anyways, but that really just kind of heightened the atmosphere. And it's really hard to put into words how oppressive just being there, just being on the other side and without seeing people, just seeing the architecture, seeing the colors, and seeing all of that, and being followed. Obviously, it was very Orwellian. It was very much like Kafka. We'd get out of the car and go inside and talk to people, and they were dressed. Again, they're dressed very it wasn't a burlap sack, but it wasn't like the people in Berlin, in West Berlin. They didn't have jeans on. They had twill pants. They didn't. No one really had blue jeans on, which was again, everybody in West Berlin was running around in a pair of jeans. But at one point when we were in a bar having a beer and a sausage, the guy was like, do you have anything you want to sell while you're here? Do you have any jeans? Do you want to pay in dollars instead of paying in the regular marks or East German marks? And because they wanted the foreign currency was more valuable to them than the money that I would pay for the East German marks. If you bought something and you paid in dollars, they would give you almost twice as much. Like if you bought a bottle of vodka for $3 or 3 marks, if you paid in dollars, they give you 2 bottles of vodka for pretty much the same amount of money, because they were not only getting the dollar bill that you would give them was kind of like not just currency, it was like an extra thing, a value that you were giving. But at the same time, the only people who really wanted to talk to us were the shopkeepers, were the bar people, were the people that was their job to talk to us. If we stopped someone on the street to ask them directions to the KaDeWe, which is the German supermarket or the German Target store, they wouldn't even stop and talk to us. They'd keep going. Because, of course, just like I had instructions not to talk to people when I was on the Helmstadt Autobahn, because I could be passing them information, anybody that we talk to immediately comes under suspicion as being someone that the authorities have to come back and talk to afterwards, and because we could have given them information, they could have given us information. So nobody wanted to talk to us unless it was their job. And even then, there were some people who were kind of glad to talk to us, like the barman who gave us the beer and sausage and asked us if we wanted to sell any jeans to him, or cigarettes. He asked if we had any cigarettes we wanted to get rid of. But the people in the KaDeWe, when we went in there, some of them wanted to, but some of the shopkeepers were very, it's over there, and they would go in the other direction, right? They really didn't want to have much to do with us. What did I get? The one thing I got that I kept for a long time was a down comforter. I got a goose down comforter and brought that back. It was kind of red and white striped, very bright. And I got a few other things, but nothing that I really kind of kept and hung on to as much as that comforter. I bought some vodka. We bought like a case of vodka while we were there. Russian Stolnitchaya. And it was really cheap. It was like unbelievably cheap. It was like, like they were giving away vodka. We didn't have a big trunk in the car. We would have got a lot of vodka just to kind of give to our friends. And other than that, we just drove around and looked around. One of the things that was neat to see was the car. There was a brand of car there that was made out of wood. And in looking at it, you wouldn't know that it was made out of wood, but it had been into an accident. And you could see instead of a dent, it had splinters, right? Where the laminate had been kind of bashed in, and the laminated wood was, had, instead of forming a dent, formed kind of like a hole with the splinters taken out of it, and then they just patched it with another piece of wood. It was pretty weird. But even the comforter that I bought, once I got it back, I realized that it was very kind of cheaply made. And after using it for a little while, it kind of got lumpy. And, it was only after having it for a little while that I realized that a lot of the things that were there were kind of like that. In that, even if some of the stuff that we got, it wasn't high quality. It was very low quality. And that was another thing that you noticed, was that there weren't the Mercedes, they weren't the BMWs, even the taxi cabs in Germany are Mercedes or BMW, right? I mean, that's just the car over there. Over here, it was if there was a car, and there were very few, it was a Citroen, or it was one of these plywood cars, or something like that. So the people weren't happy. They kind of walked around, with their head down like this. They didn't like to make eye contact. Even the people who obviously could see us in our military uniform, because you had to be in uniform, they knew that we were Americans. They steered clear of us. They wouldn't make eye contact with us, and they just kind of, they didn't smile. I mean, even when you're walking down the street and you pass somebody, you might smile and nod or smile, sup, or whatever. They didn't do that. There was no sup. It was look down or look away, hurry, scurry past. And, it immediately became kind of depressing. We'd go into a bar, people would stay away from us. It was very, depressing. And then we got in the car. At the end of the day, we've been, looking around and shopping and doing some stuff, and we still hadn't seen everything that we wanted to see. We went to see the Brandenburg Gate and some other stuff, but so we go back to Checkpoint Charlie. We pass through, and it's like passing into Oz. It was like passing, into that big green, in Wizard of Oz, you go through the field and everything is green and bright. That's what it was like going back into West Berlin. Everything was bright. Everything was shiny. Everybody was happy. Everybody was looking you in the eye and smiling at you. And, it was a party. Hey, you want something to drink? You want a sausage? You want some dinner? We've got a steak over here. It was opposite of where we had just been. And it was more palpable. It was more, you could even tell even more now that you had just been in this gray land. And, when you went back into West Berlin, it was like neural overload. It was like, sensory overload. It was too much. I mean, we had to kind of, after a little while, we went back to our hotel and we just kind of were quiet. And then the next day we did it again. But we were going to spend the entire day there, and we just couldn't do it. We did a little shopping. We went looking at some Russian buildings that were in the sector. But, we just got tired of it. So we went back to West Berlin, and kind of the same thing. You're passing out of this gray zone back into, the land of the living. And, to experience it was, I think I was really lucky because, like I say, being an American, parents you're telling you, you don't realize how good you have it, or, you're spoiled or whatever. But you got a good sense of why, Americans were still in Germany at the time, why we were still there as an army of occupation. And when someone says, talks about the Iron Curtain, or someone talks about the Berlin Wall, and they talk about what's going on the other side of it, and you realize that's what's happening. I mean, there really is a bad guy out there, because if you think about it, the wall was there. It wasn't there. It's not there to keep all the Americans and all the people in West Germany who just have to get into East Germany. It's not there to keep them out. It's there to keep the people who are there in. And everybody who was there, if you look at it, was a captive. They were just in some big giant prison, and it was like we went into that prison for the day and walked around and looked at the prisoners. And at the end of the day, we got to leave. We got to go back and get out of the prison. But the people who were there, they didn't get to. It was very emotional. It was. So, same thing happens. We get back, at the end of our stay. We were there on a 4-day pass. So it's like a day to drive up, 2 days to look around, and a day to drive back. So, and it's in the winter time. So, the day that we're supposed to go back, it snowed horribly. I mean, like a blizzard came through, and they shut down the Helmstadt Autobahn. We couldn't get back through again. So, we get to stay in West Berlin for another day. We get to go around and look around and see more stuff that we didn't get to see, because, again, there's only one road that we can drive there and back on. So the next day they opened up and we drove through. We were, back in West Germany, and we drove from Helmstadt back to Wiesbaden. And We talked to friends about it. We told people, what it was like, and we told people, kind of, um, and we kept saying, if they didn't know, we kept saying it was like a police state. It was like it was like, at all the time we felt like we were under observation. It didn't feel like we could do anything without getting into trouble, and people who were more well-read, we would say, well, hey, it was like Orwell, it was like 84, it was like Kafka, it was, it was very oppressive, is the word that we would use, and it's something that stuck with us. It really did.